Welcome back to Chronically Authentic, the podcast. Hi. I haven't seen you all year. This is our first podcast of 2024. So I'm just going to count the last few episodes as a practice run because one of my things going into 2024, and I'm not going to speak for anybody except myself here, is I am in a no nonsense realm of my life. Like I have goals, I have visions, and I am not willing to beat around the bush anymore. And that's really what I want to talk about this episode. So let's dive right in.
Damn, even that intro was no nonsense.
Precisely
Let's
my
get
point.
right to it.
Let's get to it. We kind of ended 2023 on the podcast with my origin story and how I got here talking to you, and really how Chronically Authentic was created. The concept of it was, I don't know, whatever magnificent phrase you would like to throw in there to make it sound bougie. But the gist is like we ended it hearing the tale of how I got where we are now. How did you get here?
I'm just along for the ride, man.
He just appeared one day.
Yeah, kind of. That whole journey that you described, I just appeared one day in the middle of it.
He just showed up and was like, yeah.
Huh?
Huh? I love that damn cat. We ended 2023 talking about how, I got where we are. I got where I am now. And I think it's important to keep that in mind when you hear today's conversation, because you really heard the depths of where I was mentally, physically, us both in our marriage. And now I want to talk to you about like the vision that has come from all of that madness and crazy that we went through for a couple years there. Now, Matt and I run our own business. We are very much into fitness, so much so that it's literally what we do now. And we help other people turn their lives around, gain control back of their own whatevers and whomevers, and they do the damn thing,
Yeah, we would be remiss if we didn't share some of the knowledge that we picked up along the way. And while we're not perfect by any means or claim to be perfect, it's nice to just engage with people and like see where other people are at on their journey and provide some insight or just be friends to people. That's really all we're looking for.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's a business. And every business, any person that owns a business or runs a business, they all have one thing in common. Do you know what that is?
They have a vision or a goal.
Yeah. That's
Fucking
literally what I was going to say.
nailed it.
Get out of my fucking head. Yes, they have a vision. They have a goal. But their goal and their vision, it takes action. It takes planning. It takes patience. It takes a lot of hit the ground running and going. And one thing about 2024 that I really see in that vision for us and this and you and how you fit into this, because you're a part of this now too. So, sucker,
You stuck.
you stuck with us, is the doing. I feel like we are in a time right now where, honestly, to like really be honest here, I feel like we're in a time of like when I lived in California, everyone talked a really big game and everybody had all of these really big plans, but you never really saw the product of those words. You never really saw the result of the plan or goal or whatever. It was just a lot of talk and nothing ever came of it. We live in a time right now where everybody is trying to do something, but the majority of people are running their mouths and saying that they have a lot of things going on, but they're not doing anything to actually put action behind the word. 2024 for me is I'm not talking about what I'm doing anymore. I'm not sharing about it. You're going to watch me do it. This year is all about no more nonsense. No more talking about it. We're doing it.
Something you said earlier this week really resonated with me when you said a lot of people say they want things, but I don't want to say I want anymore. I'm just going to say I'm going to do this or I did this.
No, I'm going to say I'm doing this.
I'm doing this.
Because I'm speaking on the action, not the want or the desire. I'm just doing. This is a year of doing, like I said. I feel like a lot of us get lost, and this is very true with fitness. It's pretty much true with anything. Like you spend so much time making this big plan of like how things are going to pan out. And like we know, like life never gives us what we want and it never happens the way that we plan it to, and that we don't really factor in the curveballs. That's why they're curveballs. We don't think they're coming.
That's what I was going to say. One roadblock pops up and people swerve out of the way. And then next thing you know, it's hard to get back on that course. But that's what persistency and consistency is all about.
Facts, my dude. I also personally really struggle with talking about the things that I'm going to do, which plant seeds in other people's gardens for my ideas or my concepts or my words or things like that to blossom in other areas where they should have never been. Out front, I have a flower garden. And during the pandemic, I planted these violet, viney type flowers. And after a couple years, we redid the flower bed and we ripped everything out and replanted new stuff. And to this day, those same violet viney plants still grow in my garden. I don't know how, because we ripped them all out. The only reason that my plants should be growing somewhere else that are not my garden would be because the wind brought them there. And by the wind, I mean the air in my lungs, because we're out there running our mouths talking about what we're doing.
Yep.
2024, aside from being a year of doing, it's a year of doing it in silence. I don't have plans. Don't ask me what I'm doing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really have anything cooking right now. But when it comes out, you'll know about it.
Personally, I'm one of those people that like I need to just see it in action. I can't explain it. I could maybe paint a picture, but by painting a picture that requires giving away details.
That's why NDAs exist or think tanks exist or things that are like not classified, but whatever the version of that would be for businesses. You have meetings behind closed doors for a reason. It's because you don't want your intellectual property or your ideas to get to your competitors and them to get an advantage on you. That's why those things exist. And it comes in the simplest form as just day-to-day content, media management, all the way up to Fortune 500 companies.
I feel like I used to be really bad about wanting to brag about the things that were going on because I was just doing so from a very insecure place. Because I personally felt like I had nothing to offer, but if I embellish and fabricated these big grandiose ideas that I had in the works, kind of like the mindset of just speak it into existence and they would just happen, but that there's a disconnect from saying the words and not following through on the actions. You ever hear someone say you got to have an action plan?
Mm-hmm.
That is my action plan. My action plan is to take action in silence and just do it. Action plans require the action behind the plan.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm someone who struggles with anxiety. I'm someone who struggles with depression, but I still manage to get shit done, even though I'm anxious, even though I'm in my feels. And I get that everyone is not me. But there are the same resources that exist for you, for me, for him, for the guy next door, for anybody. We all have the same opportunities to make the changes in our own lives, to take those actionable steps.
It's almost like when I've heard you say in the past, or I've heard other people say in the past, that we all have 24 hours in a day. Like we all get the same amount of hours in a day. It's just about where are you applying your time during those hours. Before we ever got into connecting with people and running a business, I used to just spend a lot of time watching TV or surfing the internet or watching YouTube or reading sports articles and stuff like that. So, like, where are you being intentional with your time in order to accomplish the things that you want to do?
I remember the time sitting him on the couch watching TV and me at our dining room table working on my computer, just
Clack, 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 clack.
clacking away, whether that be researching, whether that be assignments that I had from therapy. I mean, you go back over the last couple of years, after going through everything I went through, the last thing I wanted to do was sit down and watch and waste my time basically. And this is funny because we were just saying this the other day, how I wasted so much time stuck in a dark place with the curtains closed, wallowing in the mental health and using those things as an excuse instead of using them as a reason to claw my way out of that hole. and letting myself get to the absolute worst. I mean, I told you guys the story. If you missed that episode, go back to part two and, hear about it.
Hmm.
Because, sometimes you need to hear how you need to see with your eyes. You need to see how deep the hole was
Hmm.
to recognize like how hard it is to get out of that place. As Matt loves to say, it's not lost on me when you're struggling with those things. But at the end of the day, it's on you whether you need extra help, whether you need professional help, whether you need resources like books. The internet is a infinite void of resources for you to find your way out of that deep dark hole. So while he's sitting over there on the couch, I'm sitting at our dining room table clawing my way out of that deep
Yeah.
dark hole,
Yeah.
whether it be researching stuff about my implants, whether it be learning recipes because finding out that my gut imbalance and like had these like candida issues in my gut and all this shit. Nobody came in and saved me. And nobody's going to come into 2024 and make my vision a reality. You always hear people say, if you want something, you have to be willing to work for it. You do. And I'm going to give you some really good advice. I'm going to give it to you for free. Do it with your mouth shut. Don't tell people what you're going to do, show them.
Hmm.
Because talk is cheap.
You ever set a really big expectation for yourself? Like, I'm going to do this by the end of the month, or I'm going to do this in 2 weeks, or my vision board has me doing
And then you
this.
don't do any of it.
It's great to have vision boards. It's great to have goals to accomplish things in a certain amount of time. But if you don't do the appropriate things in order to get there, you almost feel worse when you don't meet that goal than had you just put your nose to the grind and done it, or gotten halfway without ever saying anything. And then you can be like, damn, I had this internal goal that I was going to do this. And while I didn't accomplish it, look at all the headwork I made when I was doing instead of talking. When people see you not reach a goal that you made this like big production about, it almost makes them like doubt you in a way. And while that can fuel the fire, it can also be like, I mean, what are they doing? Like, can they actually accomplish this?
I was on a team call a couple weeks ago and we were going over our vision boards. And surprisingly, this should not come to a shock because this totally plays into what I was just saying a few minutes ago. Surprisingly, only a couple of people had a vision board prepared, which I'm kind of shocked. Like that so many people lack a vision for where they want to go or what they want out of their time in their life. One person in particular had shared they didn't make a vision board for this year, so they shared their vision board from last year, and instead of talking about this year and being like, well, I don't have a vision board prepared, but let me talk to you about what my goals are. They pulled up their previous year's vision board and just kind of just nitpicked and
Mm.
pointed out all of the things that they didn't do. Very uninspiring. I'm gonna just tuck that one right into bed. So uninspiring.
Yeah.
Like if that were me and I realized that everything I said I was gonna do, I didn't do any of those things. That would make me internally tear myself apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes down to a mindset thing. Like you need to, as he also likes to say, flip that script. I didn't make that happen, but what I did make happen was this. And it didn't get me all the way there, but it got me pretty close. And that person is someone that I truly admire and look up to because she's an amazing woman and she's done huge things for herself and her own business and with the things that she wants to do. But hearing somebody, one that inspires you and like makes you want to work harder in your own life, hearing that person or somebody like that be so hard on themselves
Mm-hmm.
hurt. It literally kind of made me cock my head sideways and be like, wait, what?
A vision board is supposed to be lofty goals. It's supposed to be things that are like just big enough that they're almost,
Taylor Swift big.
yeah, like almost unattainable. So if you're going to go into a vision board at the end of the year and be like, well, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, that's kind of the point, is that you have these big goals that you're going to work towards. You may accomplish some of them, and you accomplished a lot of yours that were on that vision board, But you shouldn't go into it like I'm going to 100% check off every single thing on this. These are like huge life goals, and you said flip the script. You could also say change the narrative, and that's what you're doing. You're just saying, "Hey, instead of me picking myself apart here because I didn't reach these massive goals, how much closer did I get to reaching those that I didn't last year? And what can I do this year to add to the vision board and help myself get even closer?"
I have to tell you, back to the whole garden, seeds in my garden. I shouldn't be speaking because seeds get planted in other gardens, which is a metaphor for your brain. And anyway, I was scared to share my vision board. I was scared to talk about it because I don't know if this is like a, it's not a
Mm-hmm.
paranoia at all. Like, I mean, I come up with things all the time, and the next day, or later in the day, I see it everywhere else on other people's stuff, and that like infuriates me to my core. But that's a conversation for another day. Um, I was scared to share my vision board because I don't want, I knew in December when this was happening, I knew that I didn't want to be speaking about the things that I was doing. I just wanted to do them. And with my vision board last year that I made, I didn't do everything that I wrote on that vision board, or that the pictures and the thing I created. I didn't complete everything or hit all those goals. And how I said that was I did everything on here that was within my control,
Mm-hmm.
because there has to be this form of acceptance that not everything in life is in your control. And how pompous to believe that it is. Been there, done that.
You don't control the algorithm. You don't control the responses people email back to you or message back to you, or what company reaches out to you or responds to you. Some things are outside of your control, but as long as you're showing up and doing the legwork to get there and give yourself the best opportunity to, then you did kind of do everything in your power to do that.
If you set goals last year and you didn't hit them, that doesn't mean that you won't ever hit them. But if you quit, if you stop working towards that vision, that goal, you're right. You will never get there.
Mm-hmm.
But if you keep working at it and you refine and you reevaluate and you persist, it's gonna happen for you. But I'm not a religious person by any means, but people say it all the time. I'm like surrounded by people that say this constantly. It's on God's time.
There's something you and I have talked about many times where I believe that there's a reason things happen in everyone's life, or these roadblocks that we talked about pop up. And it's to create adversity in your life so that you have things that you can overcome and make yourself more resilient. And while I would never wish what you went through on any person before, it has made you a stronger person as a result of that. There's no denying that. And now you have a story and a background that makes you unique and able to adapt to certain situations and persevere that other people do not. It's the same thing with, I like to look back on my alcoholism. Had I never gone through that, I wouldn't be able to touch other people's lives and help them go through struggles that they're having and things like that. So instead of looking at these setbacks as an opportunity to give up or a reason why you didn't reach your goals, look at it as a hurdle that you got over to make yourself better and make you more equipped for the journey that you're about to go out on.
I love that you think it made me a stronger person.
100%.
Okay, well, in my mind, it just made me a person.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm just being real.
Yeah.
I was not a person before I went through all of that. I
Mhm.
was a shell of a body with a brain that was screaming to come out and be authentic and have opinions and thoughts that were my own and not
Mhm.
shoved down my throat by somebody else. I love that you brought that up. Um, Setbacks and roadblocks and things shifting your time, whatever. And just yesterday, I had an experience just like that. I
Mhm.
I was rushing to pick Matt up yesterday because I wanted to come home. I'm doing 75 hard again, and I wanted to come home and get my walk in because it was going to rain. And I was like rushing Matt. And as we're driving home, he, for the first time in our entire 7 year relationship, he's driving slower than I've ever seen him drive. And I'm like, dude, can you like hurry the fuck up? I'm trying to get home before this rain. Like, what the hell's wrong with your foot? Hit the gas. I'm like literally reaching across to the driver's side, pushing on his foot on the gas pedal to like speed up.
I was just straight spacing out behind the wheel for no reason.
Yeah, he really was. And so then, we're getting off the interstate to come home, and the person in the left lane is coming into our lane and almost hits us on the left side of the car. And then as Matt's going to get, literally 2 seconds later, as Matt's going to get into the right lane, a car comes speeding up behind him and to get in the lane ahead of him, and they almost sideswiped each other. And so Matt literally comes to basically a complete stop in the middle of the road with speeding cars coming up behind him. And I'm like, go,
And
what are you doing?
I'm like, dude, I'm having a fucking panic attack right
And
now.
I'm like, get it together. You don't like fucking stop in the middle of the road. That's how people die, dude.
Mhm.
Anyway, so he said some offhand thing to me and it pissed me off. And so as soon as we get home, I bolt out the door and I go on my walk and I leave him in my desk. And I'm like, dude, screw him. I don't have time for his shit today. So I get going and then he comes and like stalks me on my walk and catches up to me and we start walking together. And
Stalk you?
that's pretty much stalking. Yeah. You know my route.
I did run up behind you.
Thank you. Anyway, um, we go on our walk. We stop. I always take a picture of this pond that's in the neighborhood across the street. Anyway, as we're walking out of the neighborhood, this lady who lives in the house right next to the pond stops us. And she actually had a stroke recently, is what she told us. And they were cleaning out their house because she made it sound like she was a hoarder. And she even said, and I quote, just that pre death cleaning, which really made me sad that this woman just had a stroke and she's convinced her life is over. I don't know her background. I don't know her medical history. That may be the case, but it was really sad to hear someone say that. Anyway, she had us sitting there for about 15 minutes going on and on and on about the most random things.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, it went from the stroke, death cleaning. I used to be in a cult. Can you guess which cult I was in?
Oh, you can bet I was intrigued by this
Oh yeah,
conversation.
he starts listing off all these things, and so then I mean, literally, I couldn't even reiterate the conversation because it was just like all over the place. And so anyway, that held us up for 15 minutes, and then we continued our walk and got home, and then I still had to go to the grocery store to get stuff to get dinner. So now I'm like 45 minutes or so behind schedule. And so Matt had therapy at 7 o'clock. And so I left at about 6:30.
Yeah.
I left at about 6:30 to go to the store. And I'm walking down the milk aisle and I look over and I see this old man and I recognized him. I'm going to pause there. I'm going to backtrack and tell you a story about when I went to go visit Matt on deployment. And when I was coming home, my flight was from Japan to Detroit, Detroit to Jacksonville. And so my flight lands in Detroit. I have a little bit of a layover. My flight gets delayed. Ultimately, my flight gets canceled and I'm stuck in Detroit overnight. And they rebooked me for the next morning. So the next morning, I go back to the airport to hopefully get on a plane to go home. I'm exhausted. I am jet lagged. I don't know which way is sideways. I don't know. So I get to the airport really early. I'm sitting there. I'm on FaceTime with Matt. I have a very bad attitude because of the lack of sleep. And up walks an airport walker. That's what they call the people that wheelchair people around the airport. They call them walkers. With an old man in a wheelchair. Now I miss his throat bubbles.
With an old man in a wheelchair.
With an old man.
With an old man in a wheelchair. It's gonna be me one day.
With an old man in a wheelchair, and he's got a bag of McDonald's in his lap. And he pulls out a smaller bag from the bag in his lap and hands it to the walker behind him because he bought him breakfast as they were bringing him through the airport. And so the walker, leaves the old man in his wheelchair and goes away. And so it's just me and this old man in his wheelchair right down the aisle from me, in the little seating area. And he starts trying to talk to me about stuff. And I'm on FaceTime and I'm tired. Remember, I'm like annoyed. And I was just like, yeah, ha, 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 on the phone anyway, and just kind of wrote him off. Well, I still needed a seat assignment for that flight. So I had to go stand in line to talk to the agent once they finally got to the gate to get a seat. And while I'm standing there, I'm standing next to the old guy in the wheelchair and we start talking. His name was Richard. He's a really sweet old man. And he needed to go up to the gate as well because he was supposed to have an aisle seat and they gave him a middle seat. So I had offered him, because I had an aisle seat at that point, um, I had offered to give him my seat on the plane and take his middle seat so that he could be more comfortable. And he was like super appreciative of that and said I could get on the plane early with him and whatever. So he said to me, when we get to Atlanta, wait for me because they'll have one of those golf cart things that will drive him to the next gate and I can just take the fast pass.
Oh, VIP
Yeah, he'll give me the
in style.
mhm. Yeah, so I did. I waited for Richard. But what was funny, and I was telling Matt this last night, was on that flight, I ended up in the middle seat, was sitting next to this guy who we struck up conversation, and we were those people on the flight that just like would not shut up, cackling, laughing, just catch like literally getting each other's life stories all in like however long that flight is. I think it's less than an hour.
Mhm.
And then went our separate ways, never didn't even could not tell you that guy's name. Anyway, so I wait for Richard. We take the fast pass over to he called it taking the shortcut to the next gate, and we get on that flight and come home. And like I said, I was tired, angry, and annoyed, and I just wanted to get home because now my trip had been delayed even longer. Um, so when we landed in Jacksonville, I bolted off that flight, and while I was standing in baggage claim, I remembered, oh my God, I totally forgot about Richard.
Richard.
Yeah, and I felt so bad. I felt so terrible leaving and not even saying goodbye to Richard. So let's come back to yesterday at the grocery store. I'm walking down the milk aisle and I see that old man with a familiar face, and I'll be damned, it was fucking Richard. And I walked and I was like, "Is your name Richard?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Dude, I don't know if you remember me, but like we were traveling and got stuck and whatever." And we stood there in the aisle of Publix for like 10, 15 minutes just catching up and chatting with each other. And I got his phone number so that I could, check in on him. And I felt like one, oh, damn it, I'm not going to cry about this again.
Mhm.
I felt so good running into him because I felt so bad for leaving him behind that day. And I would not have been at Publix at that exact same time had Matt not been driving slow, had we not had that weird little argument that we had where I stormed off and left him
Mhm.
in my dust, had that lady not stopped and had that random ass conversation with us,
Which has never happened, never
never
met her
happened.
before.
In the 2 years I've been walking by their house, not a peep.
Mhm.
So that was a very long winded way of telling you that you can't time life. Life has got a plan for you, and you just have to literally let go and let God, baby. But seriously, you do have to just let go and just
Mhm.
accept what is and go with it. And it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be perfect. It sure as hell is not going to be your way. I hate when people say this, but this is not Burger King. You do not get to have it your way. And 2024 is the year of just doing it, no matter how it happens, no matter the curveballs, no matter any of it. It's going to happen the way it's going to happen, but I'm still going to show up and do what is within my control to do to get me closer to that vision that I have for this year. And if that means that I have to have harsh, fierce conversations with people, okay, fine. I can do that because it's what has to happen. Like, for example, today I was on a call and had to have one of those conversations. It wasn't planned,
Mhm.
it happened. The moral of the story is that you don't have control over anything outside of you and the action that you put in every single day. And like Matt said, I love to say all the time, we all have the same amount of hours in a day. You may have different responsibilities happening in those hours in your day, but the hours are still the same. And I hate when people say there's not enough hours in a day. There is. You're just not utilizing them properly. I don't know. Maybe wake up earlier like I have to. I have goals. I have things I want to do. Do I want to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get them done? No. I don't have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's a choice. I could sleep until whenever I feel like waking up. That's the joy of working for myself and working from home. I set my schedule. but I've also worked really hard to be in the place where I'm able to do that. Like I said, go back a couple episodes and you'll hear how hard I worked. I worked really, really hard to be here today, working towards that bigger vision. I posted a reel today, and one of the lines, I was telling a story and to get ready, and one of the lines in it was, I started doing and saying the things that I wanted versus what was expected of me.
You can say it multiple ways. You can say God has a plan for you, or the universe has a plan for you. But at the end of the day, you can only do what you can control. And what you can control is where you focus your time and energy right now. And if it's not in a place that makes you feel good or furthers what you intend to do with your life or these big, lofty goals that you have,
You have to find a way to make it happen.
yeah.
And I just know that we all have shit going on. We all have goals. We all have vision. We all have those things. And if you don't, that is a sign that you have a lot of internal work to do on yourself. And it's not impossible to do. Less talking, more doing. That is it. Like, that's it. And I'm not going to preach to you how to live your life. But if you want the things that you see other people doing and you're like, I want that. Well, they're not just going to know that and come give it to you. You have to actually like do things to make it happen. So I'm curious to know, and I would love to hear from you. You can email me. My contact info is everywhere. You can go to my website, nikkibunting.com. You can come to my Instagram, nikki.bunting. My TikTok is the same. You can come find me anywhere and join this conversation. And I'm dying to know, what is that thing for you that you have this big vision, and why are you not going after it? Are you going after it? What are you doing? What actions are you taking to get there? Are you furthering your education? Are you researching? And I don't know. What are you doing? I want to know that because one, I want to support you in it, first and foremost. And second, sometimes you need to be asked the question, or sometimes you need to be given the permission to even go after something. This is it. You have the permission. I've asked the question. What are you doing with it? It's your life. And like we've said many, many times throughout the history of this podcast, which was not very long, mind you, it's on you. Just as much as it was on me, just as much as it's on, we're all responsible for ourselves.
You're a unique individual that has amazing skills and knowledge because of all those roadblocks and curveballs that life has thrown you. So when you identify what that thing is that she's asking you is your goal, use those to your advantage and you can accomplish anything you want.
And I want to say this before we go. One thing personally as a content creator that I really struggle with, that I hear constantly in the social media realm, is, what's your niche? Who's your target audience? I didn't have an answer to that question. And I felt very lost and bored, and like I constantly had to be evolving and changing my content that I put out to the world for people to consume. I finally answered that question, because you always hear people say, what's a problem you're going to solve? And who's the person you're solving that problem for? I don't know. I don't know who that person is, but I know the description of that person. And it's the person who is just like me, who went through a struggle, who doesn't know who they are, who lacks the confidence, who uses their mental health as an excuse to do literally nothing with their life and play the role of the victim. It's the person who went through a really, really, really hard thing and doesn't know how to find their way out of that dark place. Those are the people that I talk to. Those are the people that I want to have these conversations with. But I didn't know that for a long time. And since I figured that out just a couple weeks ago, literally just a couple weeks ago, because the timing is not on me to figure out, that's on life to give me the answer. Now that I know that, the way that I show up, and not only as a person, but in my business, in my everything, is completely different. It's like this newfound confidence because nobody else has lived that experience. Not exactly the same, but there are people with similar stories, and I want to hear them. So like I said, come join the conversation. whether it's on my website, in the comments below, YouTube, whatever. I don't care where you come talk to us, but I genuinely want to know how we can support you through those things. So, like, comment, subscribe. Come find me anywhere you podcast, anywhere you hang out. Literally, I'm going to be there like a creep.
Ooh, I'm the stalker and you're the creep.
Fitting. Yeah. Love you. Thanks for being here. And I think next week we should talk about something really lighthearted and funny.
I think I agree. Let's see what the universe has in store next week.
Okay. Bye.
See ya.